going on, guys? In today's video, I'm going to teach and talk about how to solo over key changes, and in this case, we'll also be going over two of the modes, Aeolian and Phrygian. Now, as well as teaching you some licks, I will also talk about the music theory behind the key change, so you can have a full understanding of how and why this works, which will make you more well-rounded when it comes to figuring out what modes to use and what to play during certain chord progressions. Before I get started, I just want to give you guys a little heads up. You may hear me say things like flat thirds, perfect fourths, and other music theory terminology as I break down the chord progression. I'm just assuming that you have an understanding of what those things are. If not, I will also try and talk in terms for those who don't completely understand that terminology so you can follow along. Now, if you would like to learn more about that type of stuff, then check out my new immersive style guitar course, Keep On Jammin'. It is designed for you to understand how to improvise, understand music theory and guitar modes, all through 12 unique backing tracks that cover over 5 different modes. Now, the genres of music that are covered in the 12 backing tracks range from blues, rock, neo-soul, psychedelic, jazz, fusion, and a whole lot more. I'll link that down in the description if you want to learn more and check it out for yourself. Alright, so let's jump into today's lesson. The first thing that you should always look for before soloing in a progression is the chords that are being used. The chords will guide you and tell you what you can or should play over certain parts of the track. You just have to figure out how to understand what they are telling you. So for an example, throughout this entire video, I'm going to be using an F minor psychedelic style backing track from my Keep On Jammin' course. Now, this track has a bunch of different sections within the chord progression, so let's check them out. We have the intro, key change, and slow bridge chords. The intro chords as well as the slow bridge would be mainly played under an F minor pentatonic scale or the F Aeolian mode. The reason this is because every chord being used is naturally in the F natural minor scale or the Aeolian mode. Here's a comparison of the chords being played and the notes within the F natural minor scale. It's also nice to know that all of those chords are a part of the A flat major scale or Ionian mode because A flat is the relative major of F minor. So you could also play A flat Ionian or the major pentatonic over the intros and slow bridges. Now let's talk about the key change. This is where people get lost and have a hard time understanding what to play and what to look out for. I'm going to break all of this down for you so it'll be easier to understand. If we look at the chords being used in the key change, we have F minor, G flat major, and A flat major. G flat major is the odd man out, and because of that, it requires a change in scale. Almost any time you see a minor chord followed by a major chord a semitone higher or a fret higher, just know that Phrygian will most likely be the best choice. Let's take a look at the theory behind this. Here are the notes in the F natural minor scale. You can see that using the scale would be tough to use over that G flat major chord because when you play that major second note, which would be G, there would be a semitone clash between the G flat and the G, and it's not going to sound very good. Now, here are the notes in the F Phrygian scale. All three of those chords, F minor, G flat major, and A flat major, are all within this scale. So Phrygian would be the best choice during this part of the track. When figuring out what scales or modes would work well over certain parts of a chord progression, it all comes down to knowing the notes within the chords being used, as well as knowing the intervals and notes from different modes or scales, and comparing them to see if there would be any clash of intervals. Knowing what makes up a chord and scale takes some practice. If you learn how they are built first, it will then be easier for you to memorize or know the correct notes within them. I'm not going to be talking much more about this in this video, but I explain in detail how to understand all of that through Keep On Jammin'. Now, besides seeing that there may be a key change in a chord progression, it's also really important to listen and hear the change happening. If you listen closely, you should hear the change yourself. When that change happens, that's when we have to switch from Aeolian to Phrygian. It will help if you know the difference between the two, that way it'll be a much easier switch. Here are some licks that I like to use during that switch. You guys guys can apply the same breakdown to any track or chord progression, and you will see how much easier it gets understanding how this all works. So to recap what you should do, compare all of the chords that are being used to the mode or scale that you think that you can play over. If any of those chords from the progression are not within that mode you chose, then take a look at other mode options. If you see that there's a chord that really stands out and doesn't fit anything else, then you may need to change scales throughout the chord progression, because that will be a key change, just like the one we talked about earlier. Now for another example, some tracks don't have a lot of chord changes or progressions. Instead, they have a riff-based or a single chord structure. When this happens, our options widen with what modes we can use, and a lot of the times we can choose to use more than just one. In this example, it's just an A minor rock style backing track that really only uses an A note as well as a G note in a riff-based progression. The notes A and G are both in the Aeolian, Phrygian, and Dorian mode, so we can use any of those modes and it will sound just as great. Here's a little comparison of all three. But just remember to watch out for any other changes, because later on in this track, an F chord comes into play, and if you were using the Dorian mode, that F chord and the F sharp within Dorian would have a clash, and it's not going to sound good. Here's an example. Did you hear that clash once the F minor chord came into play? It completely took away from the solo and it didn't sound good at all. This is why it's important to know what you are playing over. I hope this helped you guys, or at least jump-started a spark into learning more about soloing over different chord progressions. If you want to learn more about modes and improvisation, then check out Keep On Jammin' down in the description, and you can get started on your journey of becoming the guitar player you've always wanted to become. Thanks for watching this week's video. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions about learning how to solo, and I'll see you guys next week, and don't forget to keep on jamming.